right, hello, 14ers, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is August 11th, 2021, and I know we're going to keep praying that every video that I do is the last video. How about that? All right, brothers and sisters, yes, we're still here. Yes, it's going to. Yes, I get it. I know we're still here, and I was so certain that we had understood this thing in relation to the day. But you're going to understand. We're going to see some more nuggets today, some more little gold mines, if you will, of things that are going to confirm exactly what we've been saying. And we're going to be able to confirm these things with history. We're going to confirm these things with events that are taking place now. Guys, we all know it. You see, when you see these things, as you have seen many of these things already, we've understood the 14 years, brothers and sisters. It's not a mystery. It is 2 sets of 7 still to come. We know the Lord will return after 13 and fulfill that 14th year. Okay, we understand that the book of Zechariah in the 14 chapters and the book of Hosea, the 14 chapters. We understand the book of John's 21 chapters. We understand this revelation and the connection to Jacob and his 2 wives and working another 6 years for the cattle and so forth. These things are understood. This season is also understood, brothers and sisters. Let's not forget about that. You see, we have the revelation of the year. We have the revelation of the season. We just don't have that perfect revelation of that day that it's happened yet, that it's going to happen. But if we're in the year and we're in the season, I think we can be a little patient, right? Believe me, I'm not always the most patient. I would say the place where I'm the least patient is driving. Okay, I used to drive like 5,000 plus kilometers a month a long time ago, many years ago. So I drove a lot. I'm a good driver. I could be a little bit more aggressive, but I'm still a good driver. And so maybe that's not my most patient place. I'm sure my family could attest to it to an extent. I'm not terrible, but you know what I mean. So, I get that we're not always going to be super patient because we just want to be with our Lord and Savior. We just want to go be with him and let eternity begin. Let the reality of all truth be in the presence of it and be with him forever. That's what we want. That's why we're so eager. We're not the only ones in history, right? This has been going on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, to the point where even the disciples were saying, well, now, Lord, now is the time that you're coming to save Israel. No, not yet. It wasn't the time. This has been going on for a long time, brothers and sisters. But you know what? There's a period in time when it will no longer continue. There is a time where it will all come to an end. Do you understand that? Do you understand that one day and one day in this year and in this season, it will all change. We've shared many times recently the final confirmation that we needed about the fact that the last 2 sets of 7 years, with the final year, the 15th year being the Jubilee, knowing what we know about that revelation of the 14 years, the last 2 sets of 7, in the picture of thousands of years, in the big cycle of thousands of years, not the cycle of Israel, not the cycle of Jerusalem, but in the cycle of thousands of years, the last 2 sets of 7, and the final one being the 50th and final Jubilee, which means after 14 years is the true Jubilee, the true big picture Jubilee, when everything will be returned, when all the tribes will receive their land again. That is what revealed and confirmed the understanding of everything else. You see, yes, of course, the revelation of the Gospels first, we'll talk about that. But you see, it revealed the truth of when Christ was born in the fall of 3 BC. It proved that in the spring of 33, it was his death and resurrection, but he wasn't 33 and a half years old. He was 34 and a half years old. We showed that in 29 AD, in 28 AD, he was 29 and a half in the spring, but in the fall of 28 AD, he began to be 30. It was Luke chapter 3, proving that the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar was indeed the 28 AD when Christ began to be 30. The coins on his eyes in the Shroud of Turin, they found 29. The coins were from 29 AD in the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar, which means this was absolutely correct. And the time when Christ was talked about there in Luke chapter 3. And all of these things, as we went through it, having started by going in reverse, prove that the last two sets of 7 years were the truth. Prove that the reason it was 1948, 1949, 1950 is because 3 years had to pass. 3 years had to pass before the next cycle would begin. Hence Leviticus chapter 19, we've shared so often. That said, when you first come into the land that I give you, well, this is when they first came in. 3 years was it to be uncircumcised that they couldn't take from it. And then what do we know? We know that in every cycle of 7 years, they've been disobedient. And let's not forget, then they had 1967, and they've been disobedient in every 7-year cycle since having Jerusalem. So we know that there's a punishment for Jerusalem in particular. In 1967, the Sabbath years revealed to us 289, which brought us to the Greek word 289 in Luke 13, and it was all about the fig tree. And the fig tree, for 3 years I've come. So 50 plus 3 years, and then it said 1 more year for the dung. Guess what? That brought us right to where we are right now. You might say, well, we're not in 2020. Yes, we are. It's 2020 into 2021. Okay, it goes from fall feast to fall feast. We're still in 2020 into 2021. The tribulation will begin at the fall feasts. Okay, so all of these things were proven true. And some might say, they might want to argue and say, well, what do you mean? How has it been proven true? Man, we have gone through so many scriptures and proven it out in so many places, but there's some new pieces that have come up. And I'm going to share with you one of these new pieces as well. And for those who don't know, that might be newer to the ministry, we share a lot of things in what we call the forum. In the forum, you can come to the Ministry Revealed website right here, click on the website, and in the menu, click on forum. It'll take you like 5-10 seconds to sign up, and you can join over 800 of us in the forum, talking and sharing, praying over each other, all sorts of things going on in the world, news, everything. All right, strengthening each other, lifting each other up. It's a great place to come and join. You don't even have to be active and always posting if you don't want, but you can be watching. You can be encouraged. You can be strengthened. You can see things that we're talking about behind the scenes that sometimes come to light when I do a video, and we add them into the revelation. All right. So it's a great place to come and join. And one of the things that I'm going to share with you here as we get going is one of those things that was also posted by our brother Jimmy, who actually built our website and maintains our website for us. It's a beautiful website, very easy to navigate. Everything's a one-click download. So all these videos here are also on the website with one-click download. If you want to save them or send them to family and friends, save them for your left behind info. All of our printouts, everything is there for free as well. All right. Well, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is another little shedding of light that the understanding we've got is indeed correct, which means we are here, which adds to the fuel, which adds to our energy to tell us we have understood. Okay, we've understood, brothers and sisters. You know, there's this saying, I'm sure you guys maybe even heard it in a movie or in a TV show or something over the years. Maybe you're even in law enforcement and you've said it to others, all right, as a way to strengthen each other and lift each other up. But this is what it is. I heard it recently in a crime show I had watched. And what it was, whether it's police or whether it's FBI and so forth, people say, oh, well, they're all corrupt. Give it a rest. Okay. They're not all corrupt. Maybe some at the head, somewhere in there, there's a lot of corruption. But if some bad guy was breaking into your house, do you want to call another bad guy or do you want to call the cops? All right. Hello. So here's what it is. And it's to use to strengthen us as well. You see, the enemy has to be right all the time. You see, in good side, bad guy, good guy, cops and robbers, the bad guys have to be right all the time. Because if they're wrong once, then the good guys will get them. Okay? So that same type of analogy applies to us as well. There are naysayers out there. There are people that think we're crazy. There are people that don't believe. There are people that don't care to watch, but they're happy with attacking. Almost as if they're watching videos, whether our videos or they're attacking other brothers and sisters in Christ that are watching as well and sharing. It's like they're attacking, but if they're attacking so regularly, you would think they must be watching this stuff, right? But anyways, here they are attacking all the time. They will continue to be right. They will always have to be right until that moment they're wrong. That will be our moment, brothers and sisters. That one moment that the good is right will be when the enemies realize, oh my goodness, everything they've been telling us, they've been screaming, they've been sharing, they've been posting, they've been screaming from the rooftops is right. And that's all we need, brothers and sisters. That one moment in all of human history where it will be revealed that it's all true. And so for all those naysayers, all those that want to come against, all those that want to attack, that one moment is much closer than any of you think. That moment may even be within the next day or so. I still believe it must be. But as long as we're in this season, I'm still okay. We can still keep pushing, right? You're going to see this. You're going to understand these things. Okay? Do you guys realize that the only thing, so there's a lot of people, whether you're a pre-trib, a mid-trib, a post-trib, we've revealed here in this ministry that pre, mid, and post are all true. The 14-year revelation, the revelation of who the gospels are speaking to, the revelation of the 14 years have all proven together that pre, mid, and post, that they're all true. But for those that still don't believe in a mid, or those people that you speak to that don't believe in a pre, those people that you speak to that still don't believe a pre-trib is true, understand this. If pre-trib isn't true, how will anybody know anything's any different? When Israel is attacked and then World War III breaks out, what would make anybody think, Christian or otherwise, what would make anybody believe that it's actually the beginning of the end of days and not just another incredible, huge, or much bigger this time world war? Do you understand that if that one thing doesn't happen at the beginning, that one thing, if that one thing doesn't happen first, how would anybody know it's the end of days? It would just be another global war, more chaos. And then when it's all done, everybody will recollect and put things back together again. And you see, that's not how the end time works. the end of days is going to be spectacular in every aspect. From the incredible pre-trib revelation of the Lord of what takes place at the pre-trib escape, to the events that will take place by those involved in the midst of it with the incredible anointing of the Holy Ghost that they'll have, raising people from the dead, doing all sorts of miraculous, hugely miraculous things. This Antichrist guy in the one world government taking over. You see, is this going to be as it was in the past? You darn right it is. But it's just going to be done in a modern way. Right? There's a lot more people on the earth now. But there's nothing new. It's just going to be bigger. And this time, there are certain things that must be that have never been to the much bigger scale. Otherwise, nobody would know any different. You follow what I'm saying? There has to be these things. And it's that one thing, right? That one thing that we're talking about. You see, if we go into Ecclesiastes, you guys all know this one. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Guys, in this little nugget that you're going to see today, it's so perfect. When you understand the truth of this, it just blows your mind. It's more evidence that what we've been revealed and have understood, that we have been able to prove from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, that it's all true. But the entirety of this ministry, the entirety of the revelations, will begin at that time. And once that first event begins and takes place, then everything that you guys have downloaded, everything you guys have shared, every video, every left behind piece of material, the book, getting the Ministry Revealed book, whether it's paperback or you download it for free on PDF, whether from the website or in the comments in the description box under this video, it will all begin to be applied. You see what this says? That which hath been, okay, so that which was shall be, and that which is shall be as well. So that which was shall be, and that which is shall be. Do you know what this is, brothers and sisters? Here's the book, okay? For those of you that were wondering, it's 287 pages, so I highly doubt you're going to want to print it off. You'd be better off just buying the book, all right? You can go to Amazon, but you can also download it for free from the website. So here's the book, and this is the chapter, I think it's chapter 6, okay? Chapter 6 of the 7 churches. This is a great example, okay? A great example of that verse. What was shall be, and what is shall be. Okay, what is the was? The was is right here. Israel's history. Okay, the pre-New Testament, the Old Testament, all of this here in this column here, Israel's history typified. This is the was. Okay, the has been. These are the things that took place in history. And so when you want to say, okay, well, this is what has been done, and it will be again. Well, then we also know this portion here, the dates in AD from the New Testament. This right here in relation to the 7 churches, this is the is done. Okay, this is the is that we're currently living in and what we would call the New Testament. So you have the was and you have the is, and then what's left? Well, it's said in that scripture in Ecclesiastes 9, it said that which was shall be, and that which is, because we're in this present age right now in the Laodicean time, that which is shall be also. So it's already happened once. It's already happened twice, and we're in the tail end of it. The fall feast this year will be the end of this Laodicean age church. And then what? Then the was and the is shall become the shall be, right here. We've revealed here in this ministry the understanding of the revelation of the seven churches of the end of days, where it's going to play out again, but instead of over thousands of years and over thousands of years, it's going to play out over 14 years, two sets of 7 years. We revealed it in relation to the apostles. We revealed it in relation to the disciples who are going to put their necks on the line. We revealed it to the time when the Antichrist gets his power to continue, and that's when the beheadings and the craziness goes, and they're going to have to flee into the wilderness. We revealed it that Thyatira is the later portion of seals. They're still in their wilderness, and it's the dark ages for the church. There's no more food, meaning food of the word. All right, yes, food as well, but food of the word. And then you've got Sardis. This is the 7th year of seals. The 6 hard years have passed, and this is the 7th year. The Lord has returned at the end of 6, and it's the time of Israel's king, the time of reformation, that 7th year where the rapture will take place. The 144,000 will be sealed. And then you've got the trumpets time beginning. This is the beginning of trumpets, Philadelphia, and them going out on the missionary, and they're out for the first 3.5 years. When the 3.5 years are done, it's the period of Israel's king's removal. Here's the king. 3.5 years later, boom, as we know, Christ removed after 3.5 years. Why? Because Satan's been cast out. It's the time of apostasy. And at the time of apostasy, it's Judah's kings. And Judah, Jesus told the Pharisees and those guys, what did he say? Of your fathers, the devil. You see, and this is mid trumpets, and it'll take you to the end of trumpets and the Lord's return, feet down on the Mount of Olives. That is history. That is the cycle of what was shall be, what is shall be. And this fall will be the beginning of the is to come. All of these things, brothers and sisters, revealed and proven over and over and over again. The only thing we're waiting on is that one thing that will differentiate every portion of time in history, where whether people understand it or not, there will be millions left who will understand and believe that they've missed it. And they will have missed the pre, but they can still be for the mid, right? We understand that. This is going to be drastic, guys. This is going to be huge. And it's that one thing. That's all we're waiting for. You see? And as soon as that starts, then the is to come will begin. You see? Just as you guys know, right? 2 Corinthians 12:2. That was one of the first pieces that ever struck this ministry after the Gospels were revealed. All right? This was the next big thing. And for those that are wondering, what am I talking about with the Gospels revealed? Come to playlists and come to this video right here. This playlist, the Revealed End Time Study Note Series. And I promise you, your scripture life will open up as it never has before. Your understanding will grow, and you will be so excited when you begin to understand this intro video of the Gospels having been revealed. You'll see that Luke is speaking to the bride of Christ, Mark is speaking to the sleeping church, and Matthew is speaking to the Jews. You'll understand by the time you get to the third video why the pre and the mid and the post have all been debated, why everybody believes the way they do. And it's because the whole church has been taught with a foundation of Matthew. They've not understood the purpose of Mark's gospel, and they've not understood of the purpose of Luke's gospel in the 3 synoptic gospels. It will excite you like it never has before when you understand the Gospels, when you see them open up the way they do, I promise you, it's going to be one of the most exciting days of your life in relation to Scripture. Okay, this second video will introduce you to the revelation of the 14 years. And what this is all about is the understanding of this right here of 2 Corinthians 12:2. You see, when we read 2 Corinthians, when the church reads these things to us, it's always read in the is. This ministry reads with eyes in the is to come. Okay, with the revelation of opening up scriptures for the end of days. That's what we've been given here. And so when I say it's Luke, the pre-trib, it's Mark, the mid-trib, and it's Matthew, the post-trib. And you see that it's the Gospels revealed first, and then it's the 14 years. You can understand now, or you will begin to understand within this study note series. Okay, watch them all if you can. This one's going to blow you away. The 7 churches I was just talking about. Okay, you will begin to understand why we are so adamant, why we're telling you this is the season and time. Not because I'm saying it, but because the scriptures have revealed it. It was all about us getting to the 70 years of Israel, to the end of 70 years, but it needed to be understood correctly. And nobody has ever understood it. That's why none of the churches are speaking about 70 years anymore. That's why nobody's talking about the 50th of Jerusalem anymore. Well, it's been revealed here. We have the understanding. The final 7 and 7 and the final Jubilee 15th year has proven itself by going in reverse all the way back to the birth of Christ. Okay? It's incredible. And so when you see that with the Gospels, Luke in the end, so what was in the beginning was Matthew, Mark, Luke for the synoptics. In the end will be Luke, Mark, Matthew. And then you see that it's 14 years as the truth of the end of days. So when you come to something like 2 Corinthians 12:2 and you look at it with end time eyes, and it's Paul here speaking, having come after now 14 years, and he's talking to the Jews. You see, he's talking to them saying as if he's now here the third time. The third time he's ready to now come to them. He's talking to the Jews, saying that he's not going to be burdensome to them, that them as parents, right, because we were all grafted in, they're the ones that needed to take the brunt of everything and wait till the very end. So he's speaking to them as if he's here the third time, and he's telling them when it all began and how it started. And what does he say? I knew a man in Christ above, okay, more than, before, in front of 14 years ago. And this one we're told is like a harpazo, like a rapture, not the rapture. Okay, that's the mid-trib. That's in the 7th year, in the time of seals, after 6 years of seals, in that 7th year. Okay, this is the pre-trib, and it's like a rapture, and they're going to go to the third heaven. So if it's the above portion, what is this above portion? Who is this above 14 years speaking to? It's speaking to Luke's group. It's speaking to Luke's group. Luke's group is that portion of that 40-50 day revelation that comes before the 14 years begin. So there's a 50-day count, but the core of that count is the 40 days of the Son of Man. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail of this today, because in the next give or take day or so is where I believe the end of that 40 days can take place, and we're going to show it out with scripture a little bit more. Okay, so this is why it's like a rapture, but we know it's not something where they're staying on earth. They're going to the third heaven. And then you see he's telling them then another time, he says, and I knew such a man, and he says how that he was caught up, not like a caught up, that went to the third heaven. This second time, it's how he was caught up. This one is the rapture, and this group is going to go to paradise. You see, what's the difference between those who get to go pre-trib in the like a rapture to the third heaven compared to those who have to endure seals until the 7th year when the great multitude rapture comes? This group here, this first group, this Luke group, which is the above portion, which is that group that goes before Luke's discourse starts, right before it starts. This group right here is the group who is diligently seeking the Lord, who loves the Lord and his neighbor, who lifts up his brothers and sisters, who is seeking him, watching and praying, who's been baptized. This is the difference between group one and those who are just still in the world. Those who say they believe in Jesus, but they still continue to live their lives. You see, it's a difference between, if the Spirit is really in you, you want to change your ways. You're striving to change your ways. You're working to change your ways. You don't want to keep going out and partying. You don't want to keep doing those things that you may have been doing, because the Spirit in you just like it's I can't do it. And you might slip sometimes, but you don't want to, and you strive to keep from those things. And for the vast majority, the most that you can, you stay away from those things. And sometimes you're able to stay away from them forever, and the Spirit has strengthened you so much. That's the difference. This group here that's going to get caught up, this is the difference with the people that say, I believe in Jesus. You see, I believe in Jesus. Remember those demons that were in the kids, or sorry, that were in the people, and they were going to go in the pigs, and Jesus said, hey, shut up. Right? He tells them to shut up. Why did he tell them to shut up? Because they knew who he was. They knew who he was. So if the enemy knows who he is and they're not saved, do you think just because you say, I believe in Jesus, you're saved? Why do people think that that's all it takes? That just all you got to do is believe, but you can go keep living your life? Do you know why? Because there are scriptures that tell us as long as you believe, right? But what they failed to understand is the circumstances and who was being spoken to at that time. Do you see the guy on the cross who was next to Jesus, the thief? And then he said, Lord, remember me when you come. And he said, you'll be with me in paradise. You see, he didn't tell him he'd get to go to the third heaven. Do you know why? Because in that final moment, he didn't get to make life changes and become this great, a big overcomer. He believed in that moment. So there's no reward of the third heaven. This is the difference. And this is why the tribulation is going to take place. This is why that portion for the sleeping church, Mark's group, the great multitude rapture, and it'll be the greatest revival ever. This is the reason for it. It's the final portion. When this period of 7 years, when this period of seals portion is over, really 6, because the rapture will happen in the 7th, it'll be the end of the age of the church. It will be the end of the Gentile age. So he's got to make it a smackdown for people to wake up and to cry out for him. They're going to have to show by their endurance and their faith and seeking and praying him for everything. You see, that's the difference. This is pre-trib Luke. This is mid-trib Mark. This is post-trib, feet down. You see, the first one goes to the third heaven, taken away. The second one goes to paradise, a place taken away. The third time, he's coming. This is when he comes feet down. So a taking up, boom, a coming feet down. This is the revelation. So this above 14 years, now you can understand this above, meaning before the 14 years begins, before that time of this fall feast begins, a group has to be taken. like a rapture to the third heaven. Of this, there's no question. The question has always been what and how far above 14 years? Well, we know it's got to be less than 15, or I would have said above 15. This above is that 40-day portion. It's a count of 50, but the core understanding of it is the 40 days. And we're going to see this 40 days going to this year's end, and the furthest out this can go in relation to the year's end that we need to understand. So now, in relation to this 14 years and this understanding of it, and knowing that we're here because it was just proven in the count going in reverse. And we've done this now for several months, close to a year, in relation to understanding this count in reverse. But we've known the 14 years now for almost 4 years, over 3.5 years. This is the ministry with the revelation of the Gospels. Those are the two keys to understanding all of these things. Well, like I said, if for those that join in the forum, our brother Jimmy, actually, I think our brother Jimmy shared it in the forum as well. I believe he did, but he had sent me a text as well. Check this out. Let me show this to you, brothers and sisters, because this is awesome. This is why I'm sharing with you guys a little bit more of this 14 and really letting you see the understanding of it. Okay. Our brother Jimmy went and looked up Jubilee, trying to understand the Jubilee. Now understand, there was a Jubilee for the count of Israel becoming a nation. There was a Jubilee, or there is a Jubilee for Jerusalem in the count for when they had Jerusalem. But what people have done is they try to put it all together, meaning that the one for Jerusalem must also be the one for the big picture count of the 6,000 years. Well, it's not. Does it have a connection? Yes, it has a connection, but there's only one way to understand that connection. You need to have the 14 years. That's the core of understanding the connection. And you have to understand that even in the 70 and even in the 50 for Jerusalem, you have to understand that for all the trees, it's plus 3 years when they first come into the land. You have to understand for the fig tree generation, it was 3 years given to it, right? For Jerusalem, 3 years given, and then 1 more year of dung. Both of those calculations, both of them, for Israel becoming a nation on May 14th, 1948, plus 3 years, right here was the end of 70 years, or right here was the end of the true 70 years. And for Jerusalem, from when they had Jerusalem, which was June, I think it was June 11th. So right here was the end of the true 50 years, because it was Luke 13, right? 3 years I've come, and then 1 more year of dung, let it be. Which means in May and in June of 2021 was the end of the true 50th and the end of the true 70th. But then we said, well, why hasn't the tribulation begun? Right? The 14 years are to begin. Psalms 90 and 10 said from 70 to 80. That means the 10 years have to begin right after the 70 years are done. So from 70 to 80, then a short period of time, then it says soon, and then it says we fly away. But everywhere people read we fly away, they always think it means the rapture. It has nothing to do with the rapture. It has nothing to do with pre-trib. It has nothing to do with mid-trib. It has to do with Revelation 12:14 when they fly into the wilderness. Okay, for a time and times and half a time for the final 3.5 years of the trumpets. So how long was that? 10 years, soon, a short period of time, about 6 months, and flying away for 3.5 years. That's 14 years. Which means from the time that the 70th comes to an end, the 14 years got to begin. Well, did they begin in May? No, there was no pre-trib. There was no attack on Israel and them having to be removed from the land. How about in June? No, there was nothing in June either. And we were looking at it and saying, well, what about counting from Nisan? If you count from Nisan, well, nothing happened from Nisan either. So Nisan never happened, May never happened, June for Jerusalem never happened. So something was amiss. And as you guys know, that became the revelation of the house of Israel compared to the house of Judah. And I'm bringing this up because what's going to matter the most now, and what is the only thing left? The time of the fall feasts. That's the only thing remaining. But we're not choosing it because it's the only thing remaining. We're not spitballing. We have revelation that's been given to us for the last 4 years almost. You see, and we use that as we dig because our eyes have been given to see understanding in the is to come, which helps reveal and confirm in the is and the was. And so we're going to go have a look back in time and have a little bit of a look here in the was to show that which shall be. Check out this information about Jubilee. Okay, it's the Wikipedia page. And Jimmy had, when he posted it, he had shared that, look up the number 14. There's 14 everywhere. So all you do is you do that Control F, punch in 14, and see all the times it talks about 14. Okay, talking about 14 years, 14 years, 14 years, all over the place. Well, wait until you see this. Are you ready for this? This is going to blow your mind. And it's going to be tied in exactly what we were just talking about from right here. Rabbinic scholarship always assumed non-accession reckoning for kings, whereby the first partial year of a king was double counted both for him and as the last year of the deceased king. Now, if you guys remember this, we've shared this a number of times, right? Just recently. It was all about this right here. This guy that had written the book, Edwin R. Thiel, and there was another guy that had written a book before him. Now, I didn't go and read the book. I got the highlights here because all we needed to understand was this one key. You see what we were talking about? You remember? If it never happened at the time of Nisan, and it never happened at the time of Israel, a nation, and Jerusalem being taken over, well, then what's going on? Doesn't a year begin at Nisan? Well, it does. One of them. So you got one on the biblical side that begins at Nisan, but let's not forget, you've got another beginning of year at Rosh Hashanah. And we know this year, it's not the 7th, the 6th into the 7th, or the 7th into the 8th. The crescent moon will be seen in the 8th into the 9th. So on the 9th, okay? And here's the thing, 5781 becomes 5782. The Hebrew calendar is probably just off a day or so, depending, a couple days, depending on the month and depending on the year, all right? But here's the thing, it's a difference of a change of calendar. So you've got two ways of two true years that Israel, that the Hebrews look at these things. We revealed in this study, in this guy's book, that he greatly went into details of. See, it was published in 1951, and the guy who had gone into these details before him and realized these things was like, I think it was the late 1800s, maybe very early 1900s. So this has been around for a while. It's recognized and accepted by most scholars that this is the case. And what it is exactly this. It's this reckoning of accession years to non-accession years. Okay? And we realized when we did this study, the accession year method is one and the non-accession year method is the other. Under the accession year method, if a king died in the middle of the year, the period to the end of that year would be called the accession year of the new king, whose year one would begin at the new year. Under the non-accession method, the king, under the non-accession year method, the period at the end of the year would be year one, and the new king, and year two would begin at the start of the new year. So what is that saying? Well, we've shared it before. This is how it screwed things up for them in the past. You see, this is what we're talking about here. They used non-accession in the reckoning. And when you do the non-accession method in this reckoning, you end up short. Okay, so rabbinic scholarship always assumed non-accession reckoning for kings, whereby the first partial year of a king was double counted both for him as the last year of the deceased king. Okay, this reckoning would give 47 years from the jubilee mentioned in the 18th year of Josiah. Well, now this doesn't make any sense, does it? You can't have a jubilee after 47 years. And this is why there'd been so many debates going back and forth in history for decades, probably even hundreds of years, on how to make these counts, which way to consider them. But these books have now been detailed, these two books, and in particular this last one, and they've now understood on how and when to count for these kings, whether it was the house of Israel or whether it was the house of Judah. Okay, these reckonings were assessed based on the house of Israel compared to the house of Judah. You see, Israel appears to have used non-accession method, while Judah used the accession method. This was a huge revelation when we came across this. Well, it's the same thing being spoken about here, that if you were using the non-accession method when reckoning this count to the 18th year of Josiah, you would have said the jubilee was after the 47 years. But are you ready for this? Remember how I've recently said it a number of times, that the things that are revealed in the end, these things that have given us so much revelation, so much power and strength in his word, and encouraged us and empowered us with excitement of understanding, have not only revealed the is to come, they've helped us understand the is of things that have been confusing, and they've helped us understand the things of the was that were also off track or debated or skewed in history. It's incredible how it does it, and we're going to prove it again. Now, these guys already understand this, but when you see something in this, just like these guys, when this book was written and it brought such revelation to be able to count the numbers properly, it made no difference to them in understanding the days of the end, in the is to come. It was a revelation to better understand the was and a little bit of the is. But for us, it was huge because it revealed greater understanding in the is to come, which revealed to us that because this time it's for Judah, the first time Jesus came, it was for the house of Israel and the Gentiles grafted in. This time he's coming for the house of Judah. The first was house of Israel, sorry. This time he's coming for the house of Judah. Yes, it's the last 7-year portion for the house of Israel, for the Gentiles and so forth. But when he's coming to do his real thing, the next 3.5 years in the city and the streets and the temple built and then being cut off, this time it's all about Judah. So when we're doing the counts, when we're looking at this revelation, we're not counting in non-accession. We're to be counting in the accession portion, which is for Judah. And when you do that, and when they did this, looking at the 18th year of Josiah, are you ready for this? So this reckoning would give 47 years from the jubilee mentioned in the 18th year of Josiah. So obviously they knew it was wrong. To the jubilee that took place, are you ready for this? 14 years after Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians. Hello. Took place 14 years after Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians, whereas the correct reference was 49 years. This has been presented as additional evidence that the cycle was 49 years. This cycle of Josiah was indeed 14 years from the fall of Jerusalem by the Babylonians And at the end of those 14 years, it was 49 years complete, is the proper uh, uh, um, counting of it, because it's not non-accession years, it is accession years. And it was the evidence that proved it was a cycle of 49 years and then the Jubilee year. For those that have been watching for a while, you see this right away and your jaw's hitting the floor. For those that aren't understanding, you need to watch those intro videos to get this, because the 14 years after the fall of Jerusalem, after Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians, was the end of then 49 years and the start of the Jubilee. Are you ready? This is exactly what we share right here. You see this? What do we tell you is about to happen? The escape of the bride is going to happen in the above 14 years. And the house of Judah counts from the fall feasts. The house of Israel already happened. It was the spring feast when Christ came the first time. This above 14 years is this portion of time that I believe is exactly the 40 days before the year's end, which we revealed to be the Feast of Tabernacles. The year's end that is connected to the Feast of Ingathering from Exodus 34:22, from Second Chronicles 24:22, from 2 Samuel chapter 1 verse 20 to Psalms 19. Those are the 4 times, guys. This above 14 is where we are right now. It's going to happen at any moment, because we have understood the 14 years. Did you hear that? What have we proven happens? We've shown to you that Luke's discourse is a portion of 40 days. Luke's discourse is 40 days long. And when Luke's discourse begins, he says these things are coming in verse 10 and 11. But he says, but before they come, but before all these, taking you into prisons and so on and so forth, some of you will be brought up and put into death. And then you're going to see Jerusalem compassed by armies. This compassing of armies isn't yet the destruction of it. It's nigh. The destruction is near at hand when you see this. And everybody that's in the land over there in Jerusalem, get out, flee to the mountains. Why do you think that is? Because what was shall be again. 14 years after Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians was the correct to the 49 years and then the Jubilee. I'm telling you, the fall of Jerusalem, when the 40 days are over, Jerusalem will be attacked during the time of tabernacles. They will be surrounded prior to, and they will be attacked during tabernacles at the very start here of 14 years. And what did it say for the reckoning of the Jubilees? That after they were attacked, 14 years later was what? The Jubilee. Told you. Any naysayers still around? Anybody still want to spew garbage that they don't understand? We've understood, brothers and sisters. We've understood. It's all true. We're just waiting for that moment. That one moment that is just moments away. It's all true. You see how powerful that was? It's awesome. It's awesome. 14 years after they were destroyed was the end of 49, and then bam, the Jubilee. It happens all the time here, guys. It continues to show itself and reveal itself over and over and over again. You see, it's no different than what Luke was telling us. You see, or what Jesus was telling us in Luke. It's no different than what Paul is telling us here in 2 Corinthians 12 too. The group going, the bride of Christ, the Gentile bride going above 14 years. It's no different than what Luke is telling us in chapter 17, or what Jesus is telling us in Luke 17, when he says, but first he must suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the Son of Man. We know that the Son of Man is here for 40 days. The bride will vanish. That escape, that moment as Enoch was, for those who were diligently, who believe in the Lord, who love him, and who are diligently seeking him, will be as Enoch was. Will not taste of death. And when that happens, we know now it's not the wedding that takes place right away. And I'm going to show you, we're going to give you a little bit more detail, digging in even a little bit more closer into this, what we've been calling nitty gritty lately. Okay, so what was he telling us when he told us this? That the days of the Son of Man, this is also a video in the intro series, the 40 days of the Son of Man. Okay, these are those 40 days of the Son of Man we've been talking about so much. Okay, and it begins when everybody was fine, eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day they got in the ark and everything began. Which means there isn't going to be any real craziness until bam, the moment the bride is in the ark and the door is shut. So let's go see the evidence of this. We go into Luke chapter 7, and what do we see? Where are we? Here it is in verse 16. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Okay, what was Luke just saying? Until they got in the ark and the door was shut, until the Lord shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth. Okay, it said it was the self same day, meaning the exact same day that the bride's gone, that the bride is taken. The Lord will be here for 40 days as the Son of Man. What is he going to look like? Is he going to look like a normal dude? I have no idea. But we know from Luke 17, he told us he would be rejected. So as much as those in the time of Jonah listened to Jonah when he went in because it was the Lord's plan, this time we know they won't listen to the Lord. Oh, there may be a few thousand and so forth that will listen, and that they're going to see themselves being surrounded and they're going to flee. But we know for the most part, he'd already told us in Luke 17 he's going to be rejected. So if this is the 40 days of the Son of Man, and it's boom, at the moment they were locked in and shut in. And then we go to chapter 8, and we see when those 40 days come to an end, we see the raven and the dove are then sent out. And the dove gives that anointing, like we say in Acts 2.0, gives them that anointing and leaves. We know that as soon as the dove leaves, the travailing and pain, the tribulation of 7 and 7, the final 2 sevens take place. This is what Jesus was telling us. So again, it's not hidden in such a difficult way that we can't understand. When he said he's going to be as Jonah was, when he said those days of Noah will be as the days of the Son of Man for those 40 days. The chaos that ensues is because of the escaping, the vanishing of tens of millions of people. You see, and during that time, there will be so many, as we read in Luke. This is why I was telling you, this is why in Luke 21, we then see this chaos that's taking place. Because as soon as the bride is gone, when it says, but before all these, so as soon as the bride is gone, instantly there's craziness. They're going to lay their hands and start persecuting Christians that realize in that moment that they've missed it. And they will commit to Christ right away in their spirit and will repent. And there's going to be people everywhere being taken into prison, some being put to death. It's going to be crazy right off the bat. But it's only the beginning of crazy. This is all just 40 days. This Jerusalem being compassed about, we shared in the last video or two as well. This compassing about is the surrounding that's going to take place. And this surrounding will come to an end. And that end of it will be with an attack. It'll be with an attack in this period of time right here. Okay? Can we grant a little bit if the moon is off, or I mean if the Hebrew calendar is off compared to the moon? Yes, maybe it's pushed over a day or so, right? Just like it is here, which means this would be pushed over, this would be pushed over. So you guys want to understand something? We've shared this before. If you guys go look for yourselves on well, in anything, you can go look on timedate.com, you can go look on Stellarium, you can go look on all sorts of things. You'll see that it's dark moon over these days right here. The crescent of the moon isn't about 2 to 3% until the evening of the 8th, or what we would call the beginning of the 9th, from evening to evening over Jerusalem. Which means the Feast of Trumpets isn't here, it's here. So if this is the true Feast of Trumpets, we still know they're not going to observe the fast of Gedalia, because this is when they're going to be surrounded. Okay, millions of people will have already vanished up here. So there's already going to be craziness in the world, and here they're seeing themselves surrounded and they're fleeing away. So what ends up happening? They're fleeing, everything's off by a day. Yom Kippur would still be off by a day, and same with Sukkot. It would probably then start, true Sukkot would be one day off. It would start on the 22nd. Do you guys realize that this year, and you can go and look at it for yourselves, you can go future, but you can go look at the ones in the past, and I don't know how many years, but 10 years or so, there's some that are close by a couple days here or a couple days over here. We're not looking for close. We're looking on this time right here. You're going to see why this is important, because what is this date right here? This is the fall, what is it? The autumn equinox. Okay, the autumn equinox. We know that the autumn equinox is the cycle of the sun. It is the circuit of the sun. This is Psalms 19. Why is this important for us? Well, you guys will remember why it's important for us. This word end, right? This word end. Being surrounded, remember? 2 Chronicles 24:23. I said 22, 20, but it's 23, right? When they're being compassed about by Syria, by the king of the north. So when they're surrounded by those from the north, by the time you get to this end of year, this end of year that's only used 4 times, we now know, we finally have the revelation that it means tabernacles. It's the Feast of Ingathering. When you read the rest of that verse and the verse after it, you see the surrounding has taken place, and now is the time of the attack. At the year's end. Well, this is the year's end. Okay, this is that section of what those are talking about, which is saying the year's end. We have it. We know it. You see, there's a lot of real key scriptures that follow this with Psalms 19. And we're going to get into them in a minute, because Psalms 19 tells us something very important. And you know what? I'm going to save this because I want to show you something else to confirm where we are with this 50-day count. But we'll get back to this in a moment, because it's very powerful. Extremely, extremely powerful. Watch this. You know, we've been saying for a long time, actually, I've been teaching it for about 3 years, that the bride of Christ is spring wheat, not the wheat planted in the fall and harvested in late spring, early summer. The spring wheat is what's planted in early spring and harvested in late summer. We've talked about it recently. We've done videos not too long ago, and we did videos like 3 years ago about it as well. I want to show you guys something, because one of the questions has been, well, where are we counting then this 50 days? Well, you'll come to understand that if you go in reverse from this time frame right here, because you're going to understand this is all about the circuit of the sun. So it's the circuit of the sun, it's the year's end at the Feast of Ingathering. Do you know when I was what I was getting at with the year's end at the Feast of Ingathering? Do you know how often the year's end and the Feast of Ingathering begin at the time of the autumn equinox? That's the one I was saying. Go back and look forward and look in reverse and see anyone that lands on the date of the equinox, of the fall equinox. It's very rare, and this year it does. This year it does. And you're going to see why Psalms 19 in connection with it is so important. But to understand where we are and how this even counts and how we got here would have to be from somewhere in here. From the first, maybe on our side of the world, which in Jerusalem would be the 2nd of August, right? When I had said my mom's birthday. So somewhere in here would have to be the time of the count for the 50 days, right? That key 50, then 10, and then the final 40. And you're going to see why we're so focused now on it just being 40 before the end. And that's, again, it goes back because at the year's end, that's when this surrounding of attack will take place. The attack from the surrounding that was taking place will happen at that year's end. That's why when we read over here, it was such a great confirmation that took place 14 years from the fall, which then was the end of the 49. So if you go backwards, he's saying 49 years minus 7 is when Jerusalem was attacked and fell. Well, that's what we're telling you. The only way that that equals this year is right here. And we're told that it would be according to the end of the year, where it's given to us 4 times. One to let us know when the bride is going to begin her wedding. One to let us know, like Luke chapter 2, where Simeon is now going to be taken, those I believe who were workers with the Lord for 40 days. Right? With Hannah, his mother. Hannah then shows up. It's all in Luke 2. And then you've got the other portion of it, which is going to be the representation of the attack. And when the attack happens, guess what it's going to be? The beginning of the 14 years. And that's what the beginning of Psalms 19 is. Or that is what Psalms 19 represents. And it's what? It's the circuit of the sun. The only way that's true is if it's right here at the equinox. You understand? So looking at it in this 50-day count time frame, it would put us right in here. And what were we connecting back to this time right here? That was the wow of the loaf mass. It was all about the spring wheat being brought in and loaves of bread, just like Leviticus told us. Listen to this. Check this out. This isn't some little channel. This is Welker Farms, almost 500,000 subscribers. This must be a huge farm. And it's live 2021 spring wheat harvest. Look at when it was streamed. August 1st. Have a listen for a few seconds.
Nick Welker here from Welker Farms. We're live out in the field. North Central Montana. It's spring wheat harvest season. We're going at it. And it's a little discouraging. Not the harvest that we'd like to see, but you know what? It's a harvest. And I got a great machine to run while I'm at it. So you guys want to come tag along with me for a little bit?
Hear that? Spring wheat harvest was beginning in a huge farm on August 1st, which, of course, on Jerusalem's side of the world would have been the 2nd. Do the count, brothers and sisters. Do the count. August 2nd, 50 days. September 21st comes to an end. What is going to happen when the 50 days come to an end and the 40 days of the Son of Man will also come to an end? What do we know is the revelation? What was Jesus telling us from Luke 17 that brought us over to the book of Genesis and the story of the ark? When did the dove go out? The dove went out at the end of the 40 days of the Son of Man. What happens during the 50 days or the 40 days represented in Luke? They will be surrounded. And after they're surrounded and the 40 days of the Son of Man are over, what's going to happen? Boom. Israel is attacked. You see, check this out. This is August 4th, 2021. Miller, Baker's fret as drought withers North America's wheat harvest. Okay, it's a poor year because of the droughts. And it's talking about the bakers and spring wheat for baking, for the breads. And they're going to have to go into old supplies. Spring wheat is now, guys. We are spring wheat. All right? We are spring wheat. This is the time of the count. And if this is the time of the count, and this is the beginning of the cycle of the new year at the year's end that we've been looking for 2 years, well, then what is 19 telling us? What is Psalms 19 telling us? You realize Psalms 19 is a huge deal, guys. Okay, Psalms 19. Let's read Psalms 19, a few verses. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament show his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. There's the word tabernacle. At the time of the cycle of the sun, at tabernacles this year. You following? Which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, rejoicing as a strong man ready to run a race. For his going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit, this is that word, this is that one only used 4 times, and his circuit unto the ends of it. Do you want to know? You want to know how power-packed punch these verses are right here? First of all, we have a tabernacle for the sun, because it's going to be the time of tabernacles. We have him telling us that the whole world can understand it if they knew how to look up and read the sun, moon, and stars. Then it says he's as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. Do you understand that what this is saying is he was just with his bride? Okay, you can say he was just with her. He just consummated the marriage, which would mean day 1 he consummated, and boom, it's the next morning. Do you know what this equals? Do you know what this equals on the calendars, brothers and sisters? This day right here. This day right here. The morning of the 22nd is the new circuit of the sun, which was from the year's end. You see, the year's end from night into day. Okay, this is that portion of the year's end we're talking about. And what are we saying? Remember, if it's off by a day, like we showed, and off by a day, this is off by a day. What is this being? This would be the beginning of Sukkot, and it would be the 7-day wedding feast, right? Of which, when the 7 years were over, he was with her right away. And so here it is, morning time, and what happens? Boom! He's come out of his chamber as a strong man ready to run a race. And it's telling us it's the same year's end as when the feast of first fruits of the wheat harvest of the bride is to be observed. This is him coming out after, quote unquote, having observed her. And do you want to see the evidence of how awesome this is? Check this out. We're understanding it's so close now, guys. It's unbelievable. You guys remember this? Of course you do. We all know it. The story of Jacob. Jacob with Leah and Rachel. Listen to this. Jacob served. So he says, you have to serve. You want my daughter? You got to serve 7 years. So what happens? Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. So he thought. And they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love he had for her. Okay. What 7 years felt like days? These 7 right here. These 7 that we're in right now, right here, that we're at the very tail end with a little over a month with almost 40 days to go. Okay. About 41 days. Remember that. Only about 41 or so days to go. We're in this right here. Right here is the exact reference of this first set of 7 years that he says flew by like days because he was so in love with her. And Jacob said unto Laban, his father, soon to be father-in-law, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled that I may go unto her. What's he saying? My 7 years are now fulfilled. We would say those 7 years being fulfilled are right here. Okay. I have now fulfilled my 7 years. And now he says, let me now go into her. Okay. That's what he's saying. Let me now go into her. I've completed my 7 years. We know that the bride is taken over here. She's being put away during this craziness and this time of the 40 days of the Son of Man. But you see, he still has to complete the 7 years. He doesn't get her until the 7 years are over. This is why the exact same wording that we have here in Exodus 34:22 is saying that thou shalt observe. That means she's already put away, but you cannot observe her, which is the Feast of the Weeks, the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the year's end. So you're not allowed to observe her until the year's end, which is the harvest year's end, at the Feast of Ingathering, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is the circuit of the time of the circuit of the sun. So you see, he's got her, she's there, but he's got to still fulfill his 40 days. When his 40 days are over and the 7 years are over, he says, give her to me that I may go in unto her. It's not a week later. It's not a day later. It's not a month later. It's that day, that right away that day, man. He's so excited to have her. So this is when he says it. And guess what? That night, he gets her. And what happens when he wakes up in the morning? He wakes up in the morning and it's now the what? The beginning of this new cycle of the sun. And what does that bring us to? Ta-da! Psalms 19. Tabernacles, which is the cycle for the sun, the circuit of it. And it's what? When he comes out as a bridegroom out of his chamber, ready to run a race. Why is he so excited coming out of his chamber? Because he was just with her. He just consummated the marriage. But what does Laban say? Laban said, and Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. How long do you think this feast is going to last? Okay. And it came to pass in the evening. So see, he's already preparing the feast. And it says, and it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him. And he went in unto her. So where is this? Right here. Here's the beginning. Remember, it goes from evening to evening, guys. Evening to evening. So right here, at the end, right here, he says, give her to me. The evening comes. He brings her to him. And then it's when he wakes up in the morning. And what happens? Okay? What happens? And Laban gave his daughter Leah, Zilpah for the handmaiden. And it came to pass in the morning, and behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, see, it was what? It was in the morning. So the next day in the morning, meaning the feast had already begun the night before. Now it's the morning of. And it says, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Did I not serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore hast thou beguiled me? And Laban said, It must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week. When did the week begin? On the evening before the morning when he woke up and realized it. He's saying fulfill her week. What week? The feast. The 1 week wedding feast. Remember, guys, this is the Gentile one. Leah is a representation of the Gentile bride. This has nothing to do with the teaching that we also show when they talk about the foolish and wise virgins and everybody's all mixed up because they're learning from Matthew. We know in this ministry, and it's also in the book, if I remember correctly, that that one is the one that's at the end when he finally marries the Rachel type and shadow at the end. You'll notice in this story, he never marries Rachel. He gets Rachel once this week is fulfilled. He gets Rachel, okay? And we will give thee also this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. So what's happening here? He fulfills this week for the wedding for Leah, for the Gentile bride. And when it's over, he gets Rachel. Well, what does that mean? Who is the Rachel type and shadow? Well, for that, you need to go back to the book. You see, who is it talking about? The apostles. Okay, there's the portion. The apostles are the main guys working for the seals. The 144,000 are the main guys that are going to work, or the main group that's going to work for the trumpets. And then you've got the tribes who are going to work the millennial reign. That group together is his representation of Rachel at the end. That's his Rachel. That's why you see at the end of Revelation in chapter 20 to 21, when it talks about the new bride coming down at 21, and it talks about the bride coming down and New Jerusalem, the foundations of the apostles, the walls, 144 cubits as the 144,000, and the gates, which are the 12 tribes. That's his Rachel. His Leah is the Gentile bride. But because everybody being taught in Matthew, they've screwed all this up. It's all been twisted and mixed up. It's literally 13 years before you can marry her, right? The girl can be born, but she can't marry till she's 13. And when she's 13, boom, there's a wedding. There's the marriage, I should say. And then they're 1 year away to prepare, which is now at the end of 14 years. When 14 years is done, boom, the wedding takes place, and it's a 7-day wedding for a total of 14 years and 7 days. Well, when does he get his Rachel? At the beginning of 14 years. But there's no wedding until it's all over. Guys, do you see how awesome this is? Are you understanding how fantastic this is? The revelation that we can see and we can understand? There's no blip in any of it. It's just greater and greater and greater opening and revelation being given. You see? And when you go into chapter 31, you can find out the time in verse 41, chapter 31, verse 41. I've been with you 20 years. 7 years was for Leah, then 7 years for Rachel, and 6 more years for the cattle. Yes, the cattle represents Judah. All right. It's 776. Why is it 776? Because it's the 7 years gets Leah. Then he has Rachel, but he can't do anything till he fulfills 7 years. So it's 7, 7, and then what? 6 years to the end of 20. And at the end of 13 years, what happens? Well, he's going to marry now Rachel. There's going to be that initial marriage. And then he's got to prepare the place for 1 year. And when he returns at the end of the 14 years, it'll be that final 1 week wedding. And it'll then be the final Jubilee after 14 years when Jerusalem was destroyed. I love this. I'm so happy when I do videos, guys. I'll tell you what, my wife is happy too, because I'm not Not that I'm mean or grumpy or anything, but maybe a little bit, because all I want to do is just share this. All I want to do is teach and to have as many people come to hear and to understand and to discern it and to seek the Lord and to pray over it and to ask if it's true, to seek the scriptures for themselves and understand and know it's all true. And history, the was, the is all proving the revelation of the is to come. And the revelation of the is to come is bringing clarity to the is and the was. It's just mind-blowing. Let's go back to Psalms 19 again. You see, those that haven't heard this before, Psalms 19, those that are newer, you see, Psalms 19, here it is, the beginning of the tribulation. Okay, the beginning time of the tribulation. First of all, it means that Psalms 18 is about to happen. Psalms 18 is going to happen at some period of time during the 40 days. It might be the energy of the Lord God coming and taking the bride of Christ out of the world. It might be from the energy of the light power that's in the bride of Christ that leaves. But when you go read Psalms 18, anybody who's left had better hold on for dear life and seek the Lord with all they have, because what is coming, the compassing of ungodly men, the floods of ungodly men, the sorrows of hell compassed me about. See, this is portions during the 40 days. They cry out to the Lord. He heard, he came down, he bowed the heavens. He rode upon a cherub. Yes, he did fly. He flew upon the wings of the wind. And when he came down, he made his darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters, thick clouds. And at the brightness that was before him, the thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. What ends up happening? The channels of water were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered. Yikes. You realize how huge of an earthquake that's going to be? That's going to rip up parts of the world. I believe it's the bulk of it is going to be America, but will bring devastation in other parts as well. This is at some period of time during the 40 days. This is before the 14 years begin. Before the 14 years begin. Which means between now and the Feast of Tabernacles of 2021. See, Psalms 19 now being the beginning, we have proof of this as well. History has also proven it. It's called the Songs of Ascent. The Songs of Ascent, they literally call them of ascent. Okay, listen to this. The Songs of Ascent is given to 15 Psalms. And they'll tell you it's Psalms 120 to 134. But that's not exactly correct. This one is. It's 119 to 133 in the Septuagint and Vulgate. The Septuagint is the original Greek Old Testament. Okay, the very first one that was from Hebrew into Greek. Okay, this is the accurate, which is 119 to 133. Well, we didn't know this until after we revealed and understood this counting of the revelation of Psalms being chapters to years, because there's a duality in the books of Psalms, meaning you can find revelation of the end of years of the 14 to 15 years within Psalms 19 to 33 and within Psalms 119 to 133. Now, do you think that's by chance, or do you think it was Holy Spirit led that we had this revelation and this seeing of scriptures and verses that were pertaining to the years and the events to come before we realized there was even this thing called the Songs of Ascent? You see, 15 chapters in the Songs of Ascent. And this is why when you hear people say, oh, well, we're in 2021, so it's Psalms 21 that applies to now. No, it's not. You see, the first person to discover that Psalms had chapters to years, I believe was J.R. Church, but he was only ever to reconcile up to 1999, meaning up to Psalms 99. And after that, it wasn't jiving, you would say. And that's because they weren't right on target. Okay, they weren't following this precision as they had up to that point. And the answer is right here, because they're not. So not only did we prove it through the revelation, through spirit-led revelation, we come to find out that there's already a thing called the Psalms of Ascent that are the same 15 chapters. And they don't only apply in the later part of Psalms, they also apply in the early part of Psalms. And we've just proven that to you by showing you Psalms 19 being connected to the beginning of it all. After he has been with his bride and he's ready to run a race at the circuit of the end. You see, you can take it to Psalms 33, which is the what, 15 years later, right? So what would it be in the Jubilee year? Well, in the Jubilee year, all the brothers, all the tribes now have their allotment. They're all being given back their land, right? The millennial reign is about to begin. So if you go to 33, what do you think you'll see? Watch this. The inhabitants of the world stand in awe, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. If you go to 133, listen to 133. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. See? As the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion, for there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. Bam. It's awesome, guys. It's awesome, awesome stuff. You see, let's not forget now. Let me, as we start to wrap this up, there's a very important book that we've also referred to many times. And just as we see Psalms 19, and we just shared how it's right at the beginning, right? That year's end, from the end of one to the start of another, is that time when he was with her, and now he's as a strong man ready to run a race. Well, when we go into the book of John is another book that reveals to us in the New Testament an incredible, you see this, everything's pretty much Old Testament with the exception of the book of Acts. John is the only other book, and John is the key of this chapters to years revelation of the end of days. And it's something we've known about for quite a long time. In fact, when we had the revelation of John, we also had the revelation shortly after, about 2 years ago now, I think it was, maybe a year and a half or so. No, I think it was almost over 2 years ago now. Oh my goodness. The revelation of Genesis. When you have in the beginning and you have in the beginning, there are differences, but the events that are taking place within that period of time are a reflection of events taking place during the total, in particular with the focus of the 14 years. Okay, you'll notice how we were just in Genesis earlier, and we were in Genesis 7 when they all got in the ark, and then the 40 days were over in chapter 8 and the 14 years began. Hello. Well, it's similar to John. When you go into John chapter 7, there's something in John chapter 7 that we all know, we've all looked at before, and John chapter 7 is relating to a period of time that would have to correlate to the end of the first 7 years. And when we've looked at it in the past, look at what you see right off the bat. The Jews' Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. In the final one right here. Now, when we've looked at this in the past, we would look at it and we'd say, well, you know, as we were trying to justify things in the spring or events between, you know, Hanukkah all the way into spring, we would kind of overlook the fact that it said the Feast of Tabernacles was at hand, And the reason we would overlook it is because it could be seen as maybe that was the beginning of it and we're looking for, something later in the year. And the reason I say that is because just because something is speaking in a chapter like this, the discernment comes in understanding where in the year the event is talking about. So in, for example, the book of Zechariah or one of these other books that are open, just because in the book of Zechariah we read something in chapter 8, it doesn't mean that it happens at the beginning of the year. Does it happen at the end of the year? Does it happen around the middle of the year? Is it something taking place throughout the entirety of the year? Well, it's no different than all of these other chapters that connect to years. Where is it happening within that 365-day year? And when we looked at this, I would just say, okay, well, maybe it's at the beginning of that year, and we know the bride is going towards the end of that year. Okay. Well, now we have a little bit more clarity, don't we? We just showed how here he is at the tabernacle for the son, and when he comes out the next day, it's tabernacles. And here we are in John 7 now, and it's telling us the Feast of Tabernacles was now at hand. See, the Feast of Tabernacles was now at hand. During this Feast of Tabernacles, brothers and sisters, this is where the wedding feast, as we just showed you, this is that type and shadow time frame of the wedding feast of Leah. He told his disciples that were with him, go ahead, you guys go up, and then I'm going to go up in secret. He goes up at the midpoint, right? Now you've got to remember, these are types and shadows. So we got to discern these things within events that took place that are giving us clues and giving us a picture of events of things that are to come. And so what do we see? He goes up in the midst, and it's all about the Feast of Tabernacles. Well, that's precisely the time we've now understood it to be. We're now looking at that circuit at the end of the year, the attack coming on Jerusalem, the week wedding for Leah, for the Gentile bride. And he tells them to go up before him. All right. Well, then what happens? If we go into John chapter 8, John chapter 8 is now the beginning of the 14 years taking place. The Lord isn't on the earth anymore, right? The Lord is in heaven. And look at what we see. We see Jesus went on to the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again to the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. We've shared this before, guys. This right here is now the time of looking at what? Well, we can look at it after the wedding, right? Because we were just talking of tabernacles in chapter 7, like the wedding week. And now the tribulation has begun, and he's in heaven, and who's standing before him? The woman taken in adultery. The Gentile bride is standing before him. We see that a stone could be cast. We could see that he's on one knee. He's telling her not to sin anymore. Remember, these are all types and shadows. He's bent over before her. The wedding has taken place. You see? And where is it? He's now before her, standing before her at the beginning of the 14 years. It's the exact same picture we've been trying to understand. This right here, this wording. Now, when he went to the Mount of Olives early in the morning, came and sat, and they came to listen to him. For those that haven't seen this in a long time, it's the exact same way Luke 21 ends. Okay. After all of this and saying those who are counted worthy, it'll be as a snare upon all those upon the earth. But watch ye and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Well, that's what's happening over in chapter 8, John chapter 8. She's now standing, the woman caught in adultery, the Gentile bride is now standing before him. And listen to what it says. And in the daytime he was teaching in the temple, and in the night he went out in a boat in the mount that is called the Mount of Olives, and all the people came early in the morning to the temple for to hear him. It's that continuation. They were already taken. The bride was already taken. Now everybody's coming to join him, and there he is standing before the bride, and everybody's there joining him. It's the same thing if we go to, if you guys all know, we go to Hosea. Hosea was another one, right? Hosea is to the Gentiles, right? Hosea is to the Gentiles, and we also understand her 14 years to the 14 chapters, or his 14 years to the 14 chapters. And it starts out the same way in the type and shadow of John chapter 8. And it just so happens, you see, John chapter 8 and Hosea chapter 1. And what is it? The Lord God, the beginning, the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, whose name means deliverer, go take unto thee a wife of whoredom, children of whoredom, and so on and so forth. You see, it's the same story, guys. I don't know how to reiterate it any more than, man, we've got it. We've understood. Let me take it maybe a little bit further, give you guys a little bit more. Well, we've seen that before. I won't spend too much time in that. Romans chapter 9, for those that don't understand this, Hosea is OC, okay? When Paul says, even us whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles, as he saith also in OC, which is Hosea, which is the deliverer, the same thing, all right, from Hosea chapter 1. He says, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not my beloved. You see, this is it. It's the same thing. It's John 8, it's Hosea 1, it's the bride at the time of the wedding. You see, yes, she was taken out and brought there ahead of time by the Father. And there she is waiting because she can't be observed until the year's end at the Feast of Ingathering, which is the end of the year and then the beginning of the 14 years. It proves itself over and over and over again. You know, let me show you as I wind this down. Now I'm coming to the end. Let me show you a couple more points with John. So there we know. Now we can see this connection to the Feast of Booths or the Feast of Tabernacles. We can see her now standing before him. Well, if this is a chapters to years, you want to see some other exciting ones? We should be able to find in the 7th year, we should be able to find the rapture. And so for those that are newer that haven't seen this before, you can go to John chapter 14 and listen to what Jesus says. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. In chapter 14, what is the many mansions? Where are these many mansions and these places that he's preparing them? In paradise. Remember how many people they said they've seen paradise and the mansions and everything else? That's paradise. This is the rapture group. He went to prepare mansions for them in paradise. And where is it? It equals the 7th year where the rapture takes place. How about the next year? Chapter 15 would be now the beginning of trumpets. The Gentile age is over. They're in paradise in their mansions because he's returned unto them. Remember at the end of the 6th seal, everybody's crying, rocks, mountains, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. You see, he's coming at the end of the 6th, but the whole world isn't going to see him at that point. But they're going to see this thing, whatever it's going to look like, coming. And when the rapture happens, he's bringing them to that place that he has prepared, which is paradise, because he's coming on heavenly Mount Zion, paradise, that I believe is going to be hovering or sitting on the mountains over there. So now that seals are over, it's now the beginning of trumpets. Mount Zion is here. It's established. The Lord is there. They're going to start rebuilding the city and the streets, as you read in Zechariah chapter 8. It says the holy mountain of the Lord is there, and they're going to start rebuilding the city and the streets and the temple. It says because before this time, for the last 7 years, they couldn't, right? Because tribulation was brought against them. Because Jerusalem had been defiled for the Sabbath years of the Jubilee. So it needed to rest the 7 years. That's why you see it in chapter 8 that the rebuilding will begin, because it's the beginning of trumpets. And so what do we see in John chapter 15? Well, we know it's the time of the grapes. The wheat portion is all over. The great wheat portion harvest, which is the main harvest now, which is the great multitude, that rapture has come in. And now it's about the grapes. It's about the fruit. Okay, it's about the vine and those growing and those who are going to be sent out during trumpets, the 144,000. So if we go to John chapter 15, the beginning of the next 7 years, look at what we see. Jesus is there on Mount Zion. You see, it's why Revelation 14, you see the Son of Man on Mount Zion with the 144,000. Hello. And he says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Okay, the very branch that taketh the way. So he's here. He's now talking about being the vine. Okay, he's talking about they need to bear fruit. And if they don't bear fruit, they're going to be cut off. Well, listen to what he says to this group. Okay, it's all about them bringing fruit, not wheat, fruit. Because it's the time of trumpets. It's the time of the 144 going out. These are the first fruits of the fruit harvest. Okay, whereas the Gentile bride of Christ is the first fruits of the wheat harvest. Listen to what happens. You come down here and it says in verse 13, he says, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. That he laid down his life for his friends. And you are my friends, if you do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord does. But I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and anointed you that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, and that whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it you. Now, I don't know about you, but has everything you have asked of the Father in Christ's name been given to you? No. You see, there's a difference. What we're talking about now isn't the is. Okay, this is all part of the is from when Christ was here. This is the revelation of the is to come. And brothers and sisters, in the revelation of the is to come is the literal manifestation of these sayings in these open books. Just like Newton said, Isaac Newton said there would be a group of men, a group of people in the end of days that will seek the revelation, that will seek the understanding, the literal understanding of these things to come. We're part of that group. There are people around the world, but we're receiving the revelation of it for the last 4 years. This is not something that has happened that all of us have the ability to do. There's going to be a literal speaking of this taking place. And it's going to happen at the time of the beginning of trumpets in the first year, when the Lord is there on heavenly Mount Zion and the 144,000 are with him. He's going to call that group specifically friends, and they're going to go out to produce much fruit. You see, and they're going to have this power and this ability to call about. But we know there's a little bit of not everybody remaining in line, right? This is where it gets into that heavy topic. Because did you hear what he said? He said, no greater love. He said, greater love hath no man than this, that he laid down his own life. Let me make it more visible. that he laid down his life for his friends. If he is now calling them friends, and this is the relation to the end of days revelation of the literal manifestation of this, then when he's calling them friends and who he is calling friends, he's telling us that he's got to lay down his life for them. And as we go further and you read and you understand, and we've talked about these things before, and you dig into what happens then in 15, 16, 17, he's praising this group that is working for him, his friends. He then tells them that I have finished my work, but I'm praying to my Father, okay, for these men which the Father hath given me. He says, I pray for them. I pray not for the world, but for them which thou hast given me, for they are mine. You see that? If you don't take this literally, and we take it in the is context that we believe it is now, well, we assume it and we put it into ways of packaging it to make it say it applies to everybody that believes in the Lord. And that's not wrong. But there is a much more direct conversation that's taken place here, which is going to be a literal future event still to come. This, as you can see, in the 1, 2, this is in the 3rd year of trumpets. He's saying he's not praying for the world. What? Doesn't that catch you a little bit off guard? I'm not praying. I'm praying for these guys. I'm not praying for the world. But I thought Jesus loved the whole world. I thought he was coming to save everybody. Doesn't he love everybody? Wouldn't he pray for everybody? That's the way we've always understood it, is it not? But that's not what this end time revelation of what this is going to be in the end. The world portion is already done. This group that there's the 144 being represented here are his friends that he has called friends, that he's going to put his life on the line for, that he's going to die for. You see, and he's praying just for them. He's not praying for everybody else in the world. He's praying for these guys because this group is about to go against Satan. When the sun is cut off, that's why he said he's going to a friend, because you're now my friends and not my servants. He says the best thing I could do for you is die for you. Why would he die for them? Because it's all connected to the revelation of Christ dying again, of Christ being cut off when Satan comes. That's why in Zechariah chapter 11, you see, and when you see, when is Christ being taken into the hands of sinful men? Boom, right here. It even says he was in the garden. Why do you think it says he was in the garden here? Because the first half of trumpets, remember, they went up to the garden. They went up to the Garden of Eden. They went up to paradise. So what happens? This is when Christ is now taken into the hands of sinful men by the deceiving Judas. So where would John 18 fall in? Bam, right here, which is the same as Zechariah 11, when in Zechariah 11 he says he's got to break the covenant that he had made. He's going to be cut off. It's the same as Daniel, when after the what is it, the 3.5 years, when Messiah is to be cut off. It all equals the same thing. Because who's come? Satan has been cast down. Okay, it's mid trumpets, the time of the 5th trumpet. Satan has been cast down to the earth sometime around spring of 32. He's going to have 2.5 years of dealing with this, of the earth, of dealing with Satan running things with the pit and his minions. This is why Christ was praying for these guys. This is why Christ was saying, I'm praying for them and not for the world. These guys are going out doing this work, but my time is ending. So I'm praying for them. But we know what happens, that none is lost but the son of perdition. Because the time when the pit is opened, who is this son of perdition that was lost? Well, we find out right here. The pit is opened and it's a reflection of Judas. So right here at this reflection, right here at this time, is when the pit is open, is when Satan's been cast down, is mid trumpets. And remember, trumpets is all about the book of Matthew. So here we are at mid trumpets. Judas at this time, Satan's is cast down. The pit is open. And what happens? It's the deception with the 30 pieces of silver. Do you know that only Matthew's gospel, when it talks about Judas, is the only one that tells us the exact amount of silver pieces, which was 30? And here we are in trumpets, which is to Matthew's time. Do you know in Zechariah chapter 20, which is to Judah, relating to Matthew, and chapter 11 talks about those 30 pieces of silver for the price paid for them? It's all in order, brothers and sisters. And what happens now, without going greater into detail about that cutting off, what would happen 1, 2.5 years later? Remember, it could be mid, it could be start, it could be end, somewhere in that year. Well, when Christ's resurrection happens, okay, it would be 1, 2.5 years later, just like it was about 2.5 days from when he was taken in the hands of sinful men to when he was crucified, and then when he was resurrected. The total was 2.5 days. So when is the Lord return? After having been cut off, he'll return 2.5 years later, the time from Daniel chapter 12 that Satan will get to be here for. And listen to what it says in John chapter 20. So here we are, John chapter 20, in the 20th year, which is the same time that Jacob worked for his wives and for the cattle and for the whole story to come to an end. And what happened in that final 20th year? It said he made a covenant with his father-in-law. What does Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 say? In that final week, which is the final year, literal year, what happens? He renews the covenant that he made. It's not the Antichrist, it's Christ. He's going to renew that covenant at the end of the 20 years or the end of the 13 years. And that covenant is the one that he had to break, that he made at the beginning of trumpets, that he had to break, as it tells us in Zechariah 18, because of the son of perdition and Satan being cast down and the pit being opened. So now when we go to John chapter 20, listen to what it says. For as yet they knew not the scripture that he must rise again from the dead. What? Many people throughout history have all had this question. Why does it say rise again from the dead? Oh, we could have just said rise again and you might not have thought much of it. But to say rise again from the dead, you see, it brings us all the way back to the revelation of the ox. It brings us all the way back to Leviticus chapter 1. Read Leviticus 1 in reverse, and you will understand why. This is when the Lord returns after having been cut off, this time for Judah, which is why this time everything relates to the feasts, to the fall feasts. There has to be a sacrifice for the house of Judah because of their fall as well, that we covered in the last video or the second last video. We've shown that they too fell, that they too went whoring as the house of Israel did. Well, the house of Israel has already had their redemption, and the final portion is seals. And the reason for it is the mercy of God to make it so devastating, because he has to allow the devastation to come so that as many as possible will turn to him in those final hours, in those final years, because that time will end. And when the seals are over and trumpets begins, it will return to as it was in the beginning. It will be the time of Judah, the time of the Jews, and it will continue that way from there forward. The time of the Gentiles will be done at the end of seals. So now when it returns to Judah, for them, the house of Judah having gone whoring, they also must have a blood sacrifice to confirm that covenant. Brothers and sisters, this is an exciting, exciting time. We have been blessed beyond comprehension. I don't know why. I, I I don't know why we've been so blessed. I don't know why the Lord has chosen all of us here in this ministry to understand these things and to work together and from all corners of the earth where you guys are. I don't know why, but I am so looking forward to seeing what he's going to do with what he's given us, to see what comes next, to see who's going to be working and empowered, who's going to remain with him for 40 and who's going to work during seals, to see what goes on and what our positions will be in the is to come of eternity standing before him. Will we go on to work with him in other realms doing something? Man, I cannot wait. But I can tell you this, we are here. We're here. As I'm speaking to you, we're right here. That 40-day count, brothers and sisters, is somewhere in here. That would bring us to the latest portion of here. So get excited, because I have just proven to you and shown to you again that the 40 days of the Son of Man are true. The destruction of, or the surrounding of Jerusalem is at the beginning of 14 years is true. What was shall be, and what is shall be, because there is nothing new under the sun. I love you guys. God bless you. God bless your families. And I look forward to meeting you all very, very, very soon. God bless you. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.